Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too.
About 4 or 5 years ago, I had a client that I worked with, and before we worked together, we actually had a call about 6 or 7 months before that. And the very first time we ever talked, had a really good conversation, and then he was getting ready to sign up, and he was kind of, he didn't have the money to go on. He was kind of shocked at, what it cost to work with a coach one-on-one. And then, we ended up staying in touch. And then 6, 7 months later, he came back. We had another call, and then we worked together for a very long time after that. And the thing that, not that, so there are times where, financially, obviously that's an issue. You have to do what's best for your family. But a lot of times what happens when I have these conversations with potential clients, with the dads I work with, is that not a lot changes in a couple of years, right? If you're reaching out for help, if you hop on a call with a coach, or you reach out to the gym for a personal trainer, and you decide, I don't want to spend the finance right now, and you justify it, and it may be justified. I'm not saying it's not. What I've seen, the pattern that I've seen, is that there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to figure this out on your own. And if you do, it's probably going to take a lot longer than if you were to ask for help. And the reason I say this is because a lot of times, if you have come to the point, I'll give you an example here. If I have come to the conclusion that, I need to, I don't know where to go with my business. I don't know, what to do, how to take the next step. And I reach out to a business coach. And after I get off the call, I tell I'm going to try and do this on my own. Well, the reason I reached out to him in the first place was because I didn't know what to do, right? So now all of a sudden I have this confidence that I can do this on my own. And chances are I probably don't. And if I do end up figuring it out, it's going to take a lot longer than if I had somebody to guide me. And that was actually the case with this client. So this client, we worked together for a pretty long time. But what happened in those 6 or 7 months that between call 1 and 2 was that he ended up gaining more weight. And then the first few months that we worked together, we actually were just working on, helping him lose the weight that he gained during the time that we didn't work together. Now, his situation, he was a little better off financially, but the fact didn't change that he wasn't quite sure what to do. I've had lots of calls. I've had lots of calls with, potential clients where, they decide, they want to do this on their own. They get on the call. They're excited about, what they could potentially achieve in the next several months. And then they decide, that this isn't for them right now. And they decide to go do it on their own. And I've had multiple calls too, where it's been years later. I've had actually 2 calls very recently where I had a call with somebody, and we had a call, a couple of years ago. We have a couple calls now, and not a lot has changed. They wanted to do it. They had the motivation to do it. They reached out to a coach, in this instance me, and then they decided not to sign up. And here we are 2 years later, and they're in either the same spot or a worse spot. And I don't say this I don't say this. I come from a place of love here. I want to see you succeed. I've done this myself. I've done this in my own business. I've done this in other areas of my life where, I know I need help, and then I decide to commit. And then when it's time to actually, move forward, when it's time to actually, handle my card to pay, I back out. And then months later, I'm still trying to figure out the same thing. Sometimes years later, it's a really hard situation. And so, I completely understand here. And I don't say any of this to scare. I don't say any of this to, make you feel bad for trying to figure out things. I like to figure out things on my own too. That's how I learn, right? I learn by doing. But throughout the years, I've hired multiple business coaches. I've actually hired my own fitness coaches as well multiple times because I only know what I know, right? And if I can learn from somebody else's experiences, that can be very beneficial, and you can actually expedite, the learning process there. I'm part of a coaching group right now, a business coaching group, and it's really awesome. And I'm just learning from other people, right? There's things that I could learn on my own, and that's great. But we only have so much time, and when it comes to our fitness, when it comes to our health, this is something that there may be a better time to do it, but I promise you won't regret it if you start right now, right? When it comes to, like, let's say you're switching careers, or you're trying to grow your own business, or you want to do a house project, there may be a better time to do that. And doing it right now may not be the best thing for you. That could put you in a hole financially. That could, there are other priorities going on. But when it comes to, like, your health, when it comes to your fitness, there really is no better time to start than right now, right? I imagine, right now, let's say 2 years ago, you said, I really wanted to do this. I want to start. I'm gonna start doing this. And 2 years go by, and not a lot has changed. And we think, maybe it's really not that big a deal. But maybe your motivation to start was, I want to lose weight, not just so the scale will go down, because I want to have more energy. I want to be able to run around more. I want to sleep better. I want to feel better. And ultimately, I want to coach my kids' teams, right? I want to feel good enough to be out on the baseball field, to be out on the basketball court, to be out on the football field, and help coach their team. And so 2 years go by, and maybe your kids are, maybe right now they're 10 and 7 and 5 or something like that. 2 years ago, they were 2 years younger. If we fast forward another 2 years, now all of a sudden you got a 12-year-old, and you have the same goals when you had an 8-year-old, right? That's a lot of your kid's life. And again, I don't want this to ever come across like I'm trying to shame you. I don't want this to come across like I'm trying to make you feel bad for what you're doing. What I'm saying is I've realized this. I've realized this as, a dad. I've got 3 young kids. We've got one on the way. And I realized just how fast life goes by. I remember working on certain things, and my business, I remember working on certain things that I wanted to improve. And I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I was sitting there talking to my wife, and I was like, I've been working on the same thing for 2.5 years. Now, obviously, I've made, improvements in other things, but I was working on the same thing when right before my youngest was born, and she's 2.5 now. She'll be 3 here in a few months. And so it's like, man, time really does fly. And I had, last May, I had a hip surgery. This past January, I had a second hip surgery. I got injured. If you've been listening to the show for a while, I spoke a little bit about it, but I was injured when I was 12. And so it's been 20 years since I've been dealing with hip injuries, back injuries, and things. And so, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of not feeling good, right? And I'm paying to work with a specialist out of South Carolina, and it's been really good. But man, if I could have, I'm learning through the experience, right? I'm learning through it, but there's times I have to realize I need to step back. I don't know everything, right? I have spent, my career working in health and fitness, and I know a lot about the body. I know a lot about, how to, how to help somebody get in shape. I know how to help somebody get stronger. I know how to help somebody lose weight. I can get somebody more flexible, more mobile. I can help them reach their fitness goals, but I don't know everything. And when I hire somebody else who does know more, my learning significantly increases. And instead of trying to figure things out for years on my own, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the expertise of somebody else. And it pays off way more. Like the guy I'm working with, it's not cheap. It's to work with, a physical therapist one-on-one and who specializes in what I need help with it's definitely not always, an investment that everybody can make. And fortunately, I've been able to work with them, and it's been extremely helpful. just being able to learn things. I was actually doing his program on my own without him. I purchased his program, and I wasn't making a ton of progress. And so I decided to just work with him one-on-one. And my, like, I can't explain the amount of growth I've had. I'm still having issues. I still have problems, but how much I'm taking like quantum leaps much faster than I would have if I would have tried to do it on my own, because I also have the value of just not having to have the set when I doubt myself, when am I doing this right? Do I just keep pushing forward? How do I keep going on? I can ask questions. I can learn. I can continue to move forward. And that's why I was trying to with my own clients, right? Like this is an investment. I always tell them, this is an investment in yourself, and it's one of the best investments you can make, because when you are feeling good, when your health is in check, when you're making strides, it doesn't just affect the number on the scale. That's probably the least cool thing about improving your health. When you lose weight, when you start getting stronger, when you build a fitness routine, you're going to feel better, you're going to sleep better, you're going to have more energy, you're going to not be falling asleep on the couch when you get home from work, you're going to perform better at work, you're going to have a better relationship with your wife. All of these things improve. Yes, it's cool to see the number go down. Right now, if you're 275 pounds and you woke up a year and a half from now and you're 200 pounds, that would be awesome. But I guarantee you, that's probably going to be the least exciting thing for you. Like, it'll feel good for a while. You'll feel good in the pictures. You'll be like, yeah, this looks great. I feel great in the mirror. But you're going to have more confidence. You're going to show up better in every area of your life, and you can keep pushing it off. This is something you can take next year. You can start next year. This is something you can keep, just keep kind of putting on the back burner and just getting by and feeling okay. But I promise you, once you've experienced the energy, once you've experienced how good you can feel when you start actually prioritizing your health, you're never going to go back. You're going to be like, this is who I want to be, now this is who I am now, right? And it takes a mindset shift, because if you're 30 years old, if you're 40, if you're 50, and you've been one person your entire life, you've been the person who's been overweight, you've been the person who, doesn't exercise, you've been the person who, doesn't really have a good grasp on nutrition, it's going to take a while to solidify that. And you can do that on your own, but I promise you it's much harder. I can grow my business on my own, but I only know what I know. I need help. I need someone to help me. I can learn. I have all these house projects on my. We have a project house. I told my wife two things when we bought it. So we lived in our house for 4.5 years. I told her two things that I wanted. I didn't really care too much about. I wasn't super picky. I just say I don't want. I want a well lit street. I want lots of street lights, and I don't want a project house. We don't have a lot of street lights, and we live in a project house, right? So I've been spending 4.5 years learning on the house, right? And it truly is a blessing, though. I've learned so much, and it's really cool, because I was like just starting to track things. I was like, I can teach, my son this, I can teach my daughters this when they get married. I can help in all this. So it really has been a blessing. I've learned so much in 4.5, more than I ever wanted to. I will admit, I never thought I would need to. Things that pop up at work, if you own a house, this, things pop up that you never even thought would ever be an issue in your life. Never once crossed your mind, but it has been a blessing. But I could try and go at it alone, and it's going to take a lot longer, right? Or I could call an expert, right? And they can teach me, right? They don't have to do it every time. I've had a client who does HVAC, right? He walked me through how to fix my air conditioner, right? That's the benefit of knowing people and working with people and just being in community with people who have different areas of expertise. Health and fitness is something that everybody eats, right? Everybody wakes up in the morning and walks. We all feel like we have a pretty good grasp on it, but the truth is we don't. The truth is you probably don't either. If you've been struggling with, your health, you've been struggling with your weight, you've been struggling, to find a fitness routine, you may figure it out on your own. And I really hope, if you decide not to hire someone to help you, if you decide not to ask for help, that you do figure it out on your own. But I promise you it will take a lot longer. And I don't want that for you. I sincerely don't. And I'm not saying you have to hire me. Like, if I could work with you, that would be wonderful. I would love to work with as many clients as I can. I genuinely love working with clients. I love helping dads. I specifically chose to work with dads because I understand the importance of it. Being a dad is by far the best job in the world, and I do not take it lightly. That's why I love working with dads, because we are the example our kids see. We are, it is when we are healthy, when we take care of our health, that rubs off on our wife. Our kids start to notice. We are. I used to work when I was in college. A lady who was my boss, she used to say, "You are." I worked when I was in college. I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, and she used to tell us that we are the real world models, not the role models. We're the real world models. We are the ones that the kids are actually looking up to because we're with them every single day. And that always stuck with me. And I love that, because that's what we are as dads. We are the real world models. Like our kids, if we don't set the example, they will look to somebody else. If we don't, take care of our health, there's a good chance they might not either. And if they do, it's going to be much later in life when they're out of our house, right? They're not buying groceries, right? We're the ones, providing for them. So it's our job to help lead them. And if your kids are older right now and you haven't done the best job at prioritizing your own health right now, it's going to take some time. That's one thing I hear a lot with my clients is that I'm starting to make better choices right now, but my wife's not on board, the kids aren't on board right now. There's a lot of pushback. That to be honest, I would be a little concerned if there wasn't pushback. Because a lot of times what happens is, you probably have tried a workout program before. You've probably tried a diet before. You've probably tried something and you most likely didn't stick with it, right? You probably still wouldn't be having these same problems if you did stick with it. And so maybe you've tried, 3-4 workout plans. You tried going to the gym and it only lasted 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, right? You did a diet. You tried something. You tried keto. You tried intermittent fat. You tried something and it didn't work. Or it didn't work as quickly as you wanted. And so you weren't motivated and you stopped. And so now you're trying another program. Now you're trying something else. Now you're trying to eat better. And your wife's a little apprehensive. Your kids don't really want to buy into it. And you can't blame them. Because in the past, what they've seen is they've seen you stop after a couple of weeks, after things got hard, right? And so that's one of the benefits. That's why I am a coach. That's why I've hired coaches, is because having outside eyes, having accountability is extremely important, and it's super beneficial. And, there are times when I'm doing things, not everybody around you is going to, your family, your immediate family or your distant, cousins, grandparents, so you may be trying to do something different. You may get comments, right? You may be losing weight and you may get comments from, your parents. You may get comments from your spouse even. You may get comments from your kids about, you're too skinny, you're too thin, all these things. Like those can be hard to hear, right? You're trying to make changes. You're trying to do better. You're trying to go to the gym. If you're trying to go to the gym every single day, you're not every day, but multiple times a week, and you're getting comments from your spouse about like, oh, let's just stay in bed, or why are you doing that? You went the other day. That can be hard. That's why having a coach, that's why having somebody who's going to help keep you accountable, it can help walk you through that process before everybody else in your life jumps on board. And they may never jump on board, which is kind of hard too. But that's why having somebody to help you can make this last, right? And I promise you, if you stick with it, if you start making better choices, you start being the dad you want to be, your kids will get on board, your spouse will get on board, but it has to become your new identity. You can't go back to the way you were living. I think that's what's the hardest part for a lot of people, is that they, this is a 12-week plan. This is, I'm going to do this till Christmas. I'm going to do this till, for the next few months or something. If you want this to become who you are, if you want your results to last, you can't go back. This is who you are now. You're somebody who shows up and goes to the gym. You're somebody who prioritizes your health. You're somebody who shows up even when it's difficult. That's who you got to become. And that sometimes that is why it's hard. Yes, it's a financial investment to hire a coach. Yes, it does maybe take some more resources and some more planning and some more time than you would like. But if you want to make lasting changes, you have to not just change what you're doing, you have to change your identity. And until you do that, it won't stick. It won't stick, and it will constantly be a struggle. And you'll be having the same conversation 2 years from now as you had 2 years ago. And that's definitely not what I want for you. Now, obviously, this is what I do. I work with busy dads. I work specifically online with clients. I help dads, lose weight. I help them build a fitness routine they actually can stick to without cutting in to family time. So if you've been struggling to find a plan, if you've been struggling to lose weight, you've been struggling to, make better choices and just, just feel a little bit better, have more energy, sleep better, and just look, just like what you see in the mirror, have a little bit more confidence. Or if any of these things are what you've been struggling with, I'd love to have a conversation with you. If that means, hire me as a coach, I would be honored. I would love to work with you. If that means just having, a 15, 20-minute chat and just pointing you in the right direction, I'd love to do that too. I also know tons of coaches. I'm not a fit for everybody, and that's okay. I can point you in the right direction. I've got tons of free resources. I can point you to, another podcast episode, or, I can send you a PDF, whatever is going to help you. But I do want to help you. If you've been listening to this show for a while, I hope you know that I really do care about you. If you've been taking the time out of your week to listen, to my show, to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast, I sincerely mean, it really does mean the world to me, right? I get every once in a while, I get some messages on Instagram or something, or somebody reach out on Facebook. I just tell me they've been listening to the show. They heard this, they heard that. I love it. So if you've been listening to the show for a long time now, or maybe this is your first episode, go ahead, send me a message. Let me know. Let me know if there's anything that you would like to learn, or anything I can help you. And if you've been pushing this off for a while and you are looking to hire a coach, again, I would love to have a conversation with you. I promise you that I would never recommend working with me. I would never try and push something on you that I didn't 100% believe was going to be valuable for you. So if you're apprehensive about having a sales call, and I want to just think of it as like a conversation, right? I want to just see kind of where you're at, where you've been struggling, and if what I offer could possibly help you, because I want you to show up as best as you can for your family. And so the links to contact me, my email, my website, my Instagram, Facebook group, I think all of that is in. It should all be in the show notes for this episode. But I really do what's best for you. Like I said, being a dad is by far the best job in the world, and it's hard for me to see dads who aren't living the life that they could be right now. We only have so many days, so many years with our kids, and I believe it is our responsibility to make the most of that. So thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll see you next episode.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments, or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.